Stay away. We're better without you." Those were the words my dad said to me. His face was set like stone, his voice flat. He meant it, every single word. I just looked at him, at the man who was supposed to protect me, and I said, "Okay." Days later, his text message lit up my phone. "Can you send £3,000? It's urgent." I typed back a reply, my fingers steady. Better doesn't need me. The calls started immediately, a storm of them, but it was already too late. £3,000. That's how much I was worth to my parents, not as their daughter. Oh no, they had made it perfectly clear they didn't want a daughter. They wanted a cash machine, an emergency fund they could dip into after telling me to get out of their lives. Because 3 weeks, just 21 days after my own father looked me dead in the eye and told me to stay away, that they were all better off without me, he was asking for $3,000, like nothing had ever happened. And the truly insane part, that wasn't even the worst thing they did to me, not by a long shot. My name is Chloe. I'm 26 years old. I need to tell you this story because I honestly don't know if I did the right thing or if I completely torched my own life. You can be the judge. I grew up in Altrincham, one of those leafy towns in Cheshire just outside of Manchester. It looks perfect on the surface. Posh cars in the driveways. Everybody knows which schools are the best. On the outside, my family looked like something from a John Lewis Christmas advert. My parents, Graham and Brenda, holding hands in their usual spot at the local church. My older brother Liam, the star of the school rugby team, the local hero. And then there was me, the quiet one, trailing behind, trying so hard to be good enough. The key word there is trying. Because in my house, Liam could have accidentally burned the place to the ground, and my parents would have blamed the faulty wiring. That boy got caught drink driving when he was 19. My mum's response: "He's just a lad. He's finding his feet." He dropped out of his business course at uni twice. My dad just said, "Not everyone is cut out for academia." He borrowed £5,000 from them for a business venture that turned out to be a serious online gambling problem, and nobody even batted an eyelid. It was just our Liam being a bit silly with money. Me. I once got a B in my A-level English exam. A solid B. My mother didn't speak to me for 3 days. She said I had disappointed her, that I hadn't tried hard enough. A B. Do you think that's normal? Because I spent the first 18 years of my life believing it was. I thought that was just how love worked. So, I learned my lesson early on. In our house, love had a price. The price was perfection. And my price was always higher than Liam's. I put myself through the University of Manchester. I had a partial scholarship, and I worked 2 jobs to cover the rest. I pulled pints at a pub called the Nag's Head, and I tutored kids for their GCSEs on the side. My parents didn't contribute a single penny towards my education. Nothing. Not for my rent in Fallowfield, not for my books, not for my food. Meanwhile, they were sending Liam £1,000 a month while he was finding himself in London, which mostly involved DJing in empty pubs and living in a ridiculously expensive flat. I remember asking them once, just one time, if they could help me cover a £150 textbook I desperately needed for a final exam. I can still hear my mum's voice on the phone, all tight and disapproving. "Chloe, money doesn't grow on trees, you know. You need to learn to be responsible." £150, while Liam was cashing cheques for £1,000 every single month. The message was clear. I was the responsible one. He was the one who needed supporting. I got it, loud and clear. I graduated anyway. I got a decent job in digital marketing at a firm in Manchester city centre. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a proper job with a proper salary, and I was genuinely proud of myself. I had my own little flat. I paid my own bills. And I think that, right there, was the problem. The more independent I became, the more my parents seemed to resent it. It was like me not needing them was a personal insult. My success didn't make them proud. It made them uncomfortable. Now, I need to tell you about Alex, because this part really matters. Alex was my boyfriend for almost 3 years. I met him at a friend's birthday party in the Northern Quarter. He was so charming, funny. He was one of those guys who makes you feel like you are the only person in the entire world. He'd listen with this intense focus, his eyes locked on yours. He made me feel seen. And then, the next day, he wouldn't return my calls. He'd go completely cold for a week. No texts, no answers. Then he'd show up at my door with flowers and that devastating smile, acting like nothing had happened, like I was the crazy one for being worried. It was a constant cycle, hot and cold, push and pull. When things were good, I felt like I was floating. I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. When they were bad, I questioned my own sanity. I thought I was the problem. I thought I was too demanding, too sensitive, too much. My cousin Sophie finally pulled me aside one night. We were out in Leeds, where she lives. Sophie is 3 years older than me, and she's basically the only real family I've ever felt I had. She looked me right in the eye and said, "Chloe, this man is not loving you. He's training you. He's teaching you that love is supposed to feel like constant gut-wrenching confusion. That's not love. It's control." She was right. It took me 2 more breakups, 2 more cycles of him disappearing and reappearing. But I finally left Alex for good. I walked away and I thought, I'm free. That toxic chapter of my life is finally over. Except it wasn't, because I didn't realize until much, much later that my parents had been running the exact same playbook on me for my entire life. Be sweet when they want something. Go cold when they don't. Make me feel like I'm going crazy for even noticing the pattern. Alex was just the boyfriend version of what Graham and Brenda had been doing since I was a kid. And the moment that finally cracked everything wide open, you're not going to believe it. It was a Sunday dinner, a seating arrangement. My mum was hosting. It was early December, one of those pre-Christmas family get-togethers. She told me to give up my seat at the main dining table so Liam's new girlfriend, Yasmin, could sit there. I just looked at her, confused. "Why can't Yasmin sit at the little fold-out table in the corner?" I asked. "She's the one nobody here has even met before." My mum hit me with a line that still rings in my ears. "Because Liam's happiness is important to this family, Chloe." I just stared at her. The words hung in the air between us. "And mine isn't?" Dead silence. The clatter of cutlery stopped. My dad put down his fork. My Uncle Ken, visiting from Chester, suddenly became fascinated by a water stain on the ceiling. My Auntie Carol discovered something incredibly urgent on her phone. Liam wouldn't look at me. He was just staring at his plate. Yasmin was studying her own fingernails like they held the secrets to the universe. And then my mum said, her voice dripping with venom, "You always have to make everything about you." That was it. That was the moment. Something inside me just went, calm. It wasn't an angry calm. It was a done calm. A feeling of utter finality. I said, very quietly, so quietly everyone had to lean in, "I have spent my entire life making everything about everybody else in this family, and you can't even let me sit at a table." My dad stood up then. He pointed a trembling finger at the front door. "If you can't be grateful for what you have here," he seethed, "then stay away. We're better without you." I looked around that room one last time. I looked at each face, searching for just one person to speak up for me. Not a single person did. Not one. So I said, "Okay." I picked up my coat from the back of the chair, grabbed my handbag, and walked out of that house. I didn't slam the door. Sophie called me before I even reached the M62. She'd already heard from her mum, Auntie Carol. "Just drive to Leeds," she said. "No questions asked. The guest room's ready. I'll put the kettle on." I drove for 2 hours in the dark on that cold Sunday night, crying so hard the motorway lights blurred into long, wet streaks. When I got to her flat, Sophie had a glass of wine poured and a plate of leftover shepherd's pie heated up for me before I'd even managed to take my shoes off. That woman is my everything. For the next 3 weeks, there was nothing. No calls, no texts, no worried check-ins from anyone. Just total, blissful silence from my parents, from Liam, from everyone in that room. And do you know what? Those were the most peaceful 3 weeks of my entire adult life. I went to work in Manchester, then took the train back to Leeds in the evening. We cooked food I actually wanted to eat. We watched rubbish telly. I started reading actual books again, for fun, not because I had to. I slept through the night without that sick, anxious knot in my stomach for the first time in years. I was finally starting to breathe. And then, the 14th of December happened. It was a Tuesday. I was at my desk at work, eating a sad little pot of soup. My phone buzzed. A text message from my dad. "Can you send £3,000? It's urgent." That was it. No. "How are you?" No. "I'm sorry for what I said." No. "Merry Christmas. Just send money." I stared at that screen for a solid minute, the plastic spoon halfway to my mouth. Then I typed back 5 words. "Betta doesn't need me." I hit send. I went back to my soup. Within 30 seconds, my phone was ringing. Dad. I ignored it. It rang again. Mum. Ignored. Another call. A number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. It was a message from Yasmin, Liam's girlfriend, calling from Liam's phone. As if I was going to answer a call from a woman I'd spoken to exactly once, and the topic of conversation was a folding chair. I silenced every call, every single one. And I know some of you are probably thinking, "Chloe, that's cold." But you have to think about it. These people told me to leave. They told me my presence made their lives worse. They told me they were better off without me. And the very first second they need something, oh, suddenly Chloe exists again. Does that sound familiar? Because it sounded exactly like Alex to me. It was the exact same game. Discard me when I'm an inconvenience. Reel me back in when I'm useful. But this time, I recognize the pattern. Thanks to Sophie, thanks to a really good therapist named Dr. Evans, I'd started seeing privately. And thanks to 3 weeks of quiet that had shown me what my life could actually feel like without them in it. But here's the thing. I didn't know yet why they needed that money. And when I found out the real reason, everything I thought I understood about my parents shifted. Not in a good way. In a way that made the whole thing so much messier, so much darker than I ever could have expected. I'll tell you what happened. Just stay with me, because this is where it really begins. So, where was I? Right. The 14th of December. The text. Betta doesn't need me. And my phone blowing up like I was a national emergency. I ignored every call, every text, every voicemail. And for about 2 days, I felt incredible. I felt powerful. Sophie sent me a gif of a woman walking away from an explosion in slow motion without looking back. I saved it. I still have it on my phone. But my family doesn't quit. Not because they love hard. They don't. They need hard. There is a very big difference. 2 days later, I was leaving work. I was walking to my car in the multi-story car park near Piccadilly. And there she was, my mother, Brenda, leaning against my little Ford Fiesta like she was in a scene from a film. Hair perfectly coiffed, lipstick immaculate, wearing big sunglasses even though it was 6 o'clock in the evening in December and it had been dark for 2 hours. She drove all the way from Cheshire to Manchester to ambush me in a concrete car park. Just let that sink in for a second. "Chloe, we need to talk," she said. Her voice was calm, composed. It was the voice she uses when she wants other people to think she's the reasonable one. "How did you know where I work?" I asked, my keys clenched in my fist. "Liam told me." "Of course he did. My protector." I took a deep breath. "Dad told me to stay away, so I'm staying away. It's what you all wanted." And then she hit me with it, word for word. "Your father says things he doesn't mean when he's stressed. You're being dramatic." Dramatic. The man kicked me out of our family home over a chair at Sunday dinner, and I was the one being dramatic. I felt a cold fury rise in my chest. "What do you need £3,000 for, Mum?" She got quiet. And quiet is not a normal state for Brenda. That woman could narrate a hurricane without pausing for breath. So I knew. I knew it was something big. "Your father's business is in trouble," she said, looking away. It turned out Dad's small building company had been losing money for over a year. A few bad contracts, a client who had refused to pay a £20,000 invoice, equipment he couldn't make the loan repayments on. By December, he owed close to £40,000, and the bank was threatening to put a lien on their house. The house I grew up in. Did I feel bad? Yes. For about 10 seconds. And then I remembered. This is the man who sent Liam £1,000 a month for years, while I worked double shifts in a noisy pub to buy my own textbooks. This is the man who told me to get out of his house on a Sunday afternoon. This is the man who has never once, not in my entire 26 years of life, said the words, "Chloe, I'm proud of you." So I looked at my mother, standing there under the harsh fluorescent lights of the car park, and I said, "Why aren't you asking Liam for the money?" You should have seen her face. It was a mixture of shock and disgust, as if I'd just suggested something truly obscene. "Liam is going through a hard time right now," she snapped. I almost laughed. "Mum, Liam has been going through a hard time since 2015. Liam's hard time has its own postcode. Don't be clever, Chloe." "I don't have £3,000 to just give you," I said, which was only half true. I had savings. I had my emergency fund, the one I had built up entirely on my own, pound by painstaking pound. And I was not, under any circumstances, handing it over to the people who threw me away like a piece of rubbish and only came back when the bin was empty. She grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug into my coat. "After everything we've done for you," she hissed, her face close to mine, "you're going to let your father lose his house?" I pulled my arm free. My voice was shaking, but it was clear. "What exactly have you done for me, Mum? Name one thing. One single thing you've done for me that you didn't do 10 times over for Liam." She couldn't. She just stood there, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove away. I watched her standing there all alone in that big, empty car park in my rearview mirror. I called Sophie the second I got home. I talked for 45 minutes straight, just a torrent of words and tears and anger. And she said something I will never, ever forget. She said, "Chloe, you are not responsible for saving people who never bothered to protect you. Write that down. Stick it on your fridge." Now, if you think the car park ambush was the peak of the crazy, well, we were only just warming up. Christmas Eve. My Auntie Carol calls me. Carol is my mum's sister, but she's different. She's the quiet one, the observer who never takes sides. She says, "Chloe, love, I just thought you should know. Your mum is telling everyone you've abandoned the family in their time of need. She's got Ken, your gran, the whole lot of them thinking you're some kind of monster." Of course she was. She'd launched a full-scale public relations campaign against her own daughter instead of dealing with the actual problem. It was easier to make me the villain than to face the reality of their financial mess. I told Carol the truth. Everything. The seating arrangement, the text for money, the ambush in the car park. And Carol just sighed. "I had a feeling there was more to this story," she said. "She asked me to come to her house for Christmas Day. Not my parents' house. Hers. She promised she would keep things civil. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe because it was Christmas. Maybe I was tired of eating soup on my own. Maybe a stupid part of me still hoped. Christmas morning, I drove over to Altrincham. Sophie made me promise to text her every 30 minutes, like a hostage check-in system. When I got there, it was lovely. Carol's husband, David, made me a bacon butty. Her daughter, Olivia, my 16-year-old cousin, was showing me the amazing art she'd been working on. For a little while, maybe an hour, it felt normal. It felt like family. Then the front door opened. My parents walked in, and then Liam and Yasmin walked in right behind them. I looked at Carol. She shook her head slightly and mouthed, "I didn't know." And my mum, she just smiled. A big, warm, radiant smile with her arms wide open. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," she chirped, like absolutely nothing had happened. A full factory reset. The Alex Playbook, Chapter 1. Be absolutely terrible, then act sweet and make the other person feel crazy for remembering what you did. I didn't hug her back. I just stood there. I watched her smile stay fixed in place while her eyes went ice cold. It was the look of a performer who realizes the audience isn't clapping. She leaned in and whispered, her voice like a shard of glass. "Don't you dare make a scene, Chloe," I whispered back. "I'm not the one who's pretending." My dad came over then, putting a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Let's just have a nice day, eh, love?" he said, all gentle and reasonable. The peacemaker. As if he wasn't the one who pointed at his own front door and threw me out 3 weeks ago. And part of me, a small, stupid little girl part of me, wanted to just go along with it. Just pretend. Because pretending is easier, isn't it? It's so much less exhausting. But Sophie's voice was in my head. "You are not responsible for saving people who never bothered to protect you." So I looked at my dad, and I said, my voice low but steady, "Dad, you told me to stay away. Then you asked," but Sophie's voice was in my head, "You are not responsible for saving people who never bothered to protect you." So I looked at my dad, and I said, my voice low but steady, "Dad, you told me to stay away. Then you asked me for £3,000, and now we're just pretending none of that happened?" The room went quiet again. David vanished into the kitchen. Olivia put her headphones on. Smart kid. My dad said through clenched teeth, "This is not the time or the place." "Then when is the time?" I asked. "Because it seems like the only time you want to talk to me is when you need something." That's when my mum lost it. Not loudly. It was worse than that. Her voice was pure venom. She started listing all my faults. How I was ungrateful, selfish, cold. Just like her own mother, she said. Which, by the way, my grandpat is the kindest, sweetest 78-year-old woman alive. So that particular insult backfired pretty hard. And then she said the thing that crossed every single line. She looked right at me and said, "No wonder Alex left you. You're impossible to love." The air was sucked out of the room. I heard Carol gasp, "Brenda!" Even Liam looked genuinely shocked. Something inside me just snapped. I'm not proud of what happened next, but I'm not going to lie about it either. I got right up in her face. "You don't get to use my worst pain as a weapon against me," I said, my whole body shaking. And she shoved me. With both hands flat on my chest, she shoved me. I stumbled backwards, catching myself on the edge of the dining table. A wine glass tipped over and shattered on the floor. Before I even thought, I shoved her back. It was chaos. My dad grabbed my mum. David came running from the kitchen. Liam was yelling at me to stop. Carol threw herself between my mother and me. Olivia was crying in the corner. It was the worst moment of my life, and that includes the night I left Alex's flat with a split lip and a smashed phone screen. Yes, that happened. But that's a different story. Carol walked me into the guest bedroom and shut the door. I just sat on the edge of the bed. I couldn't even cry. I just felt hollow, like someone had scooped everything out of me with a spoon. 20 minutes later, Carol came back in. Her face was grim. "They're gone," she said. "I asked them to leave." She had kicked my own parents out of her house. On Christmas Day. For me. I started to apologize, babbling about ruining her Christmas, and she held up her hand to stop me. "Your mother told you that you were impossible to love, and then she pushed you first. Don't you dare apologize for anything." That's what broke me. I cried until I had nothing left inside me. Carol just sat there with me, rubbing my back, not saying a word. When I finally checked my phone, I had 14 missed calls. A text from Liam that said, "Why do you always have to ruin everything? Mum's having a panic attack now, thanks to you." One from Yasmin that just said, "Wow," and one from Sophie. "I'm getting in my car right now." She drove 2 hours from Leeds to Altrincham on Christmas Day. She didn't even hesitate. She walked in, hugged me, hugged Carol, put my bag in her car, and took me back to Leeds. In the car, she said, "Tell me everything." So I did. And when I finished, she was quiet for a long time, just watching the dark motorway ahead. Then she said, "Chloe, I love you. And I think you need to seriously ask yourself whether these people deserve to have any access to your life anymore." I knew she was right. But knowing something and actually doing it, those are two very different things when it's your parents. Because there's always that little voice in the back of your head saying, "But they're your family." Well, what my parents did in January made that little voice go very, very quiet. Because what they pulled next, together, deliberately, was something I never would have expected. Not even from them. So it was January. New year, fresh start, all that nonsense. I was back in Manchester, living in my own flat, going to work, feeding myself, pretending I was fine. Sophie checked in every day. Carol would send me little texts, pictures of Olivia's drawings, a recipe she'd tried. Small, quiet reminders that I still existed to someone who wasn't angry with me. Then, January the 9th. I came home from work and there was an envelope taped to my apartment door. A plain white envelope, no stamp. It had been hand-delivered. Inside was a single sheet of A4 paper. It was a typed letter, not handwritten, typed like a formal business document. It said, "We have decided as a family that it is best for everyone if you no longer consider yourself a part of this household. Please do not contact us. Please do not come to the house. We wish you well." It was signed by both of my parents, Graham and Brenda. And then, at the bottom, in blue pen, was another signature. "Liam agrees." My brother had co-signed my official disownment like it was a school permission slip. I bet Yasmin picked the font. I called Sophie. I read her the letter over the phone. For the first time in her life, she was completely silent. Then she said, "Chloe, that is not a family. That is a cult with a mortgage." I laughed through my tears, a hysterical, broken sound. Because what else was there to do? Now, a lot of people in my situation would have crumbled. They would have shown up at the door, begging, crying, asking what they did wrong. I don't judge anyone who does that. The need to be accepted by the people who made you is a primal, powerful thing. But I had spent 3 years with Alex, learning what happens when you keep chasing someone who keeps pushing you away. You just disappear, piece by piece. You erase yourself for them. So I didn't call, I didn't text, I didn't show up. I framed the letter. I went to a pound shop, bought a cheap black frame, and I hung it on my bedroom wall. Sophie thought I'd finally lost my mind. I told her, every time I even think about calling them, every time I start to miss them, I'm going to look at this letter, and I'm going to remember who they showed me they are. Dr. Evans called it an unconventional but effective coping mechanism. I'm pretty sure she was trying not to laugh during our session. February was quiet. No calls, no ambushes at work, no letters taped to my door. And slowly, very slowly, I started to build something new for myself. I got a small raise at work. I started going to a yoga class on Saturday mornings. I adopted a scruffy little ginger cat from the local shelter and called him Marmalade. I made a proper friend at work, a woman named Lucy, who was going through her own messy family situation and who just understood. She didn't need long explanations. I was becoming someone, not Graham and Brenda's disappointing daughter, not Alex's messed up ex-girlfriend, just Chloe. Honestly, I started to think that letter was the best thing they had ever given me. It was a permission slip to finally be free. But the story wasn't over. You knew it wasn't. March. My phone rang at 6 o'clock in the morning. It was a landline number from Buxton. My Gran Pat. My Gran is 78, and she does not call at 6 a.m. unless somebody is dead. So I picked it up fast, my heart pounding. "Chloe, love," she said, and her voice was thin and reedy, like I'd never heard it before. "I've just found out what your parents did. Carol told me everything, and I am so sorry." My parents had been lying to her. They told my Gran that I'd moved away for a brilliant new job, that I was just very busy but perfectly fine. They lied to their own mother for months, and my Gran, who doesn't do social media, who barely texts, who trusts her family, she believed them. Until Auntie Carol finally drove up to the Peak District and told her the truth. My grandmother was crying on the phone. This woman, this tiny, tough woman, who raised 5 kids on her own after my granddad died, who worked 2 jobs well into her 60s, the strongest person I know, was crying. For me. She said, "You're coming to see me this weekend, and don't you dare argue with me." So I went. I drove to Buxton on Saturday morning. She was on the porch waiting for me when I pulled into her driveway. She's barely 5 feet tall, but she squeezed me so hard I thought my ribs would crack. She smelled like lavender and scones, and for the first time since that horrible Sunday dinner, I felt like somebody's child. We sat at her little kitchen table for hours. I told her everything, not just the recent stuff, all of it. Liam always coming first. The way "I love you" was used as a reward for good behavior. Alex, and how his games were just a copy of theirs. The letter, and how it both broke me and fixed me at the same time. She listened to every single word. She didn't interrupt. She didn't make excuses for them. She didn't defend her daughter. When I finally finished, my throat raw from talking, she just took both of my hands in her wrinkled ones and said, "Your mother was not always like this, but that doesn't excuse what she has become. And your father, He has never known how to love anyone without conditions, because his own father was exactly the same way. Then she looked me right in the eye. But Chloe, that cycle stops with you. It already has. Even now, telling you this, that one still gets me, right in the chest. Grandpat called my parents. She didn't shout. That's not her style. She told them she wanted a family meeting at her house the following weekend, and she told them it was not a request. When Grandpat says something is not a request, even my father shows up. So the next weekend, I drove back to Buxton. Sophie came with me, not for the meeting itself. She sat in the living room with a book, like my own personal bodyguard, while we all gathered in the kitchen. Everyone was there. My dad, looking deeply uncomfortable. My mum, radiating pure fury. Liam, staring at his shoes, wishing he was anywhere else on earth. Uncle Ken was there. Auntie Carol stood by the window, her arms folded. My gran sat at the head of her small table and said, her voice quiet but firm, "Someone is going to explain to me why my granddaughter received a typed letter disowning her. And we are all going to sit here until I understand." My mum went first, of course. In her version of the story, I had been hostile and difficult for years, refused to help the family during a financial crisis, and had physically attacked her on Christmas Day. I didn't say a word. I didn't flinch. I just let her talk. Because Dr. Evans taught me something important. When someone is determined to rewrite history, you don't need to fight them. The truth doesn't need defending. It just needs witnesses. And for the first time in my life, I had witnesses. Carol told the truth. She spoke calmly and clearly. She talked about the Sunday dinner, my seat being given away, about Christmas Day, my mother telling me I was impossible to love and shoving me first. She told everyone about the car park, about Mum grabbing my arm and demanding money. My mum's face went blotchy and red. My dad stared at the tabletop. Liam looked up, genuinely shocked, and I realized in that moment that my parents had fed him a completely different story. He didn't know the full truth. That hit me hard. I had been so furious at him for co-signing that letter, but maybe he had been manipulated too, not in the same way I had. He was always the favourite, but even the golden child is still just a pawn in their game. My gran turned to my dad. "Graham, is it true that you told this girl to stay away from your home and then asked her for £3,000 3 weeks later?" He mumbled. Things were said, in the heat of the moment. "And the letter?" Gran pressed. "Typing it, printing it, driving all the way to her flat in Manchester and taping it to her door. Was that the heat of the moment too?" Uncle Ken snorted. My mum shot him a look that could curdle milk. Then my gran looked at me. "Chloe, what do you want?" I thought about it. I really thought about it. "I want a real apology," I said. "Not the kind where you say you're sorry, but what you really mean is you're sorry that I'm upset. I want you to acknowledge what you did. And then I want space, because I don't trust any of you right now." My dad spoke then, and for the first time in my entire life, he didn't sound angry or defensive or rehearsed. He just sounded tired, so incredibly tired. He looked at me and said, "I don't know how to be the dad you need, Chloe. I don't know if I ever did. But I shouldn't have said what I said. And the letter, that was your mother's idea, but I signed it. So that's on me." My mum practically hissed his name. "Graham!" He just looked at her and said, "Brenda, stop. Just stop. She's our daughter." It was the first time my father had ever chosen me. In 26 years. The very first time. My mother didn't apologize. Not that day. Not ever. She just sat there with her arms crossed, radiating a cold, hard silence. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. Liam found me on the porch afterwards. He looked different, smaller somehow. He said, "Chloe, I didn't know about the car park. I didn't know Mum shoved you. They just told me you kicked off at everyone and stormed out." I just looked at him. "And you believed them? You didn't even think to call me and ask for my side of the story?" He didn't have an answer for that. Then he said, "I'm sorry. I should have called." "Yeah," I said, "you should have." It wasn't a warm, fuzzy reunion, but it was honest. And that was more than I'd had from him in years. So, this is what I decided. I chose distance. It's not a complete cut-off, but it's not letting them back in either. It's a boundary. I told my dad we could talk once a month on the phone, and if the conversation ever turned into guilt-tripping or talk about money, I would hang up, and the next call would be in 2 months. He agreed. My mum and I don't speak. She has never apologized. Carol says she still tells people I'm going through a phase. She's still rewriting the story to make herself the victim. Maybe she always will. Liam and I text sometimes. Silly memes, stuff about football. It's all on the surface. We're not close, but we're not enemies anymore. And he did something in April that completely floored me. He sent me £150 on PayPal. The note just said, "For that textbook." He'd remembered. After all those years, he'd actually remembered. I cried harder over that than I did over the disownment letter. My grandpat and I talk every Sunday, no exceptions. She sends me handwritten cards because she says texts don't count as real communication. She's met Marmalade over FaceTime and declared him the most handsome cat in the Northwest. She tells me she's proud of me. Every single time she says it, it heals a little piece of me. Sophie is still Sophie, my rock. We finally took that trip to Whitby we'd always talked about. We ate too much fish and chips, walked along the cliffs, and laughed until my face hurt. She's the family I chose, and she chose me back. My story doesn't have a perfect ending. There was no big, tearful family dinner where everyone suddenly changed and saw the error of their ways. My mum is still my mum. My dad is trying, in his own limited, awkward way. Liam is somewhere in the middle, between the brother I always needed and the brother he knows how to be. But me? I have a good job, a tiny, cosy flat in Manchester, a grumpy ginger cat, a brilliant therapist, a cousin who drove through the night for me on Christmas Day, and a grandmother who calls me brave. And I still have that framed letter on my wall. It's not a trophy. It's a reminder. A reminder that I survived the worst my family could throw at me. And I'm still standing. The cycle stopped with me. My gran said so. And my gran is never wrong. If any part of this story made you feel seen, if you know what it's like to be the one your family can live without until the moment they need something, I want you to know this. You are not being dramatic. You are not selfish. And you are not impossible to love. The people who told you that were wrong. Thank you for listening to all of this. Seriously. I didn't know if anyone would care about some girl from Cheshire and her messed up family. But you're still here. And that means more than you know. Take care of yourselves. This is Chloe. And I'm still.